Good evening, young people. Well, there's a lot going on YouTube, but there are other things going on too. And I'm trying to see if a few more people come in. If not, I'll go on and just continue with my topic because I think this is important. And closing in on 1 minute, and here I go. All right, this is a history of the term African American and an explanation as to why and how that term came about. Now, Sean Bradley posed the question in one of his lives, but there were so many other topics, there was so much going on, and we never got around to it. So I thought I would offer what I know to be the reason for that term and why we use that term today. Some of us do, some of us don't. But I think knowing the history of it helps you decide which term you want to use insofar as Black American or African American, you know. But hi, Starbell, how are you, hon? Back in the 1920s and onward, we were called colored, and we were also called Negroes. Negroes was the favorite term rather than to be called colored. So the people who were influential and so on, like W.E.B. Du Bois, those kind of people, they use the term Negro. And I remember in the 1950s, we still call ourselves Negroes. Now, we were called a lot of other things too, but, I won't get into that. And in the mid 1960s, due to all of the beginning of the civil rights and Black Power and so on, we called ourselves Black. Black power, black whatever, black is beautiful because people at that time seemed to be ashamed of being black, the actual color, you know, dark skinned black. And that's how Black is Beautiful came about. But in the that was in the mid 1960s. But in the late 1960s, when things really got lit and the movement got stronger, we all recognized that we as a people deserve to be described as more than a color because translated from Spanish, negro or negro means black. And we wanted to be connected to all of our history, going back to ancient Egypt, ancient Namibia, and so forth. And because it was noted that other ethnic groups in this country were connected to the power of a country, the power of their ancestral home, such as Mexican Americans, Japanese Americans, Italian Americans, etc. And this was at the height of the Pan African movement. But the difference was that we did not have the power of a country behind us in Africa due to slavery. So, since we didn't have that, we just claimed the entire continent because we couldn't say Nigerian American, we couldn't say Ghanaian American. Hi, Ashton. We couldn't claim any country because of slavery. We did not know as individuals which country we came from. And since Africa is such a large continent, we knew we came from somewhere in there. So That's how we started saying African Americans. Now, a lot of people don't like it, okay? I'm kind of torn because I know the exact history of it. And I don't want to, you know, I say African American and then I say black. I go back and forth because I know how it came about. And some of you are so young, to me anyway, so young, and you don't know this history and you don't know how that term came about. So when you know the entire history, then you can understand where it came from. And so many people now object to it, but I don't see any Mexican Americans objecting to being called Mexican Americans. I don't see Japanese Americans being objecting to or being upset because they're called Japanese Americans. So that's where I'm at on it. So, how are you doing tonight, Starbell and Ashton? Both of you all. Thank you for stopping by for a minute. So, that's the history of that. But then now we have biracial. And that confuses me because coming up, we didn't have the term biracial. What they said back then was that if you got one drop of black blood, you black. I don't care how light skinned you are or whatever. So I'm not sure as to what people, when they're saying biracial, do they mean going all the way back or what do they mean? So, because I'm biracial if that's the case, okay? Because I've got, hi Dion, hi hon, I've got white in me, I've got Native American in me, and I've got African in me. So, you know, and it's in my DNA. But when you see me, you see a dark skinned black woman. So I don't understand where biracial comes in because I think in this country, um, we're all biracial. And honestly, it didn't make any difference for my great grandmother who looked like she was white. She wasn't white, but she looked like she was white. She was still a slave until the end of the Civil War. And they called her auntie. They didn't call her anything but auntie. So I just wanted to know, what anybody might think about the term biracial because to me it seems as if it's trying to divide us somehow, you know, make into groups and we're all black. There I've seen people calling themselves biracial and yet I've met people or knew people or grew up with people who, you know, they had, their grandmother or somebody was very light skinned, and then when they were born, they got light skinned, but they had two dark skinned parents. So I don't know, I saw where Meghan Markle said when they tried to ask her exactly what was her race, and she was torn because she didn't know whether to put black or white. And so she put biracial. And I'm kind of, wondering about that. What do we put? So what I started doing, I started once I did my genealogy, I started claiming my Native American status along with my African American status. I just said, you know what? I'm not going to separate it anymore. But the thing is that it still causes division among us when, and I don't know who created that or who started that, but it just started within the last 10 years or so. And it makes a distinction between a black person who is light skinned versus a black person who is dark skinned. I don't know if it's helpful to us as a people to be divided like that. If we're going to be black, let's be black. And, you know, you agree, Ashton? Yeah, because it's kind of like, what do we do? We need unity and we need to be considered as one. I mean, there's people like myself who are dark skinned black people who got all these different things in DNA. In fact, um, my hair is very chemical resistant, and I found out that that's because of the Native American that I have in me, because that hair, the hair of Native Americans, is very chemical resistant. So I just wanted to put that question to everyone to find out just um, how you feel about the biracial, and also, what do you prefer to be called? What do you call yourself? Do you call yourself African American? Do you call yourself Black? And knowing that other cultures attach a country to their American status, do you think that we're harming ourselves by not adding a country, well, a continent really, to our status? Now, if you know where in Africa your ancestors came from, you can say, "Yeah, I'm Nigerian American." You can say that. But if you don't know, but you know you originated from Africa at some point in your ancestral history, then you have to ask yourself, well, what country? I don't have a country to claim. And as I discussed in my genealogy video, that's where we hit the brick wall. Once people landed here through slavery, we don't know where they came from, because unless we can trace back the manifest of a lot of these ships, and I found one of the ships, but it didn't give me enough information on the manifest, because they didn't put down, because we were not treated like we had a beginning. And so claiming Africa as African American, I think that's, you know, what we were thinking back in the 60s, is that we have a history, a world history. And when we say we're just Black Americans, okay, then our history only begins at the shores of this country. If we say African Americans, then our history goes back to the very beginning of history. So that's why that was done, and that's why a lot of people still use it. But like I say, I'm torn. I go back and forth. So Ashton, what do you think? And Starbell, I'd like some input from you guys, because I'd like to know what young people are thinking about this these days. Because I'm not a young person anymore. I just have a lot of history in my memory, and I know how things happen, and I know how things change. And this is your time, and this is your decision as to how you are addressed or defined or identified. And as for me, like I say, I go back and forth. But if you don't have any thoughts now, please leave a comment. You know, you know. Okay, Ashton, good. Okay, why do you struggle? Do you know, you have any input on that? Because like I say, this is you all's generation. This is your time, and I respect that. We did what we did during my time, during my era, and I just wonder, um, if it's fair to you all for us to put something on you and you're not happy with it. What would you prefer to be called, Ashton? Black, or you know, I've heard so many terms. I've heard foundational Black American, foundational American. I've heard indigenous American, original American. I've heard a lot of stuff. Okay, Starbell. So you just say American, period. You don't identify as far as when they say your nationality, not your nationality, but your race or your ethnicity, Starbell. You don't say, um, you know, a color or whatever. Do you say a race? What do you put on there? Because I think this is really a good topic, and I think that, as I said, like Deanna, you're on here too, huh? Hi. Um, you are in charge of this basically because it's changed with each generation. And at the beginning, you'll have to catch the replay, but you know, so you claim your home country and you're a U.S. citizen. You were not born in the United. Okay, so it's different from you for you, Starbell, because you were not born here. So it's you've got that power of that country behind you. And I'm speaking about people who, you know, were born maybe, or their family was born somewhere else, but still, we still need to know exactly what, we're called or what we want to be called. Dion, do you have any input on that? And then back to being biracial, you know, a lot of people who are from other countries um, don't like being called, even though they're dark skinned, they're not called African Mexicans, and they don't want to be called black because they take on their country. Now, I'll tell you where this is not a problem in France. They don't do that over there. It's by country only, not by color. And when I was over there, which was a long time ago, and I asked the guy, I think he was working in the hotel, and I asked him, how does it feel to be a black man in France? And you know what he said to me? He says, I'm not black, I'm French. And that just stunned me right there because that's not something I had grown up with. He was French, period. No color attached to it, nothing. But here, if you go on any document that you you get in front of you, any document, they put race. It's like right there. And that's when you have to make a decision. Whereas other countries, it's nationality. And that's something, and I have to I'll share something with you. When we were going over, my aunt had always wanted to go to London, and I had always wanted to go to France. So I treated her, along with my son, to a trip to London and France. But on the little card you have to fill out when you're getting ready to get, when you're on the plane, as far as your nationality, and my aunt did not know the difference between nationality and race. And, you know, she says, what do I put on here? I put colored? I said, no, you put American. And she looked at me like, really? And I'm like, wow. you know, she really didn't know that. And she was a very educated person, but she had never been referred to as an American. She'd been referred to as, when she came up, it was a colored gal. Okay, so um, our nationality is, you know, American. Okay. Well, Ashton, what do you put down when they put race, when they have race? What do you put? What do you put down? Thanks, Starbell. Um, when you have that question comes up on documents, what race do you put? Do you put black or do you put African American? So let me if for the black people in in this, put a one down if you would prefer to be called um, black, and put a two down if you prefer to be called African American. You go to other. Okay. Do they make you explain? I think they make you explain other on there, don't they? I know sometimes, I've had to check other, but I check too. Okay, black. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, when I see the other box, you know what I do, Ashton? I've already checked black or African American, what do they have, but then I check the other and to put Native American as well. And where is maybe she Dion? Dion, do you have a vote, hon? Or are you gone? She might be gone. Well, thank you all because you know I'm seeing more and more people saying they rather be referred to as black. Now, you know, if you're disconnected, what do you feel about Mexican Americans who are three and fourth generation here, Ashton, being called Mexican Americans, and they say it with pride, even though they've never lived in Mexico? Because I think what we were thinking back in the 60s, that when we said African American, we had the power behind us, when we really didn't, but we had the history as well. And TC, what do you think you'd rather be called? African American or black, TC? Because I got two votes on here that say black, and I think that's important because that's another way of dividing people. And I would really be goddess. You want to be called goddess? Okay. Well, when they give you this form to check, PC, as far as race, what would you prefer to check? Black or African American, or as Ashton does, other? Because it seems as if it's the same thing. We didn't want to be called colored back in the day, or Negro, so we said black. But then we didn't know our history. And once we start learning our history, oh, wait a minute, my history goes back to Africa? Because you got to realize also, back in my time, back in the day when I was growing up, long time ago, there was no Black history. The only history that I was taught was Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver and being a slave. So I was so happy to find out that I was indeed, my history started way, way back, okay, before we even came to this country. But that was amazing to me. You all with social media and access to learning have a different perspective. But can you imagine someone who was going through public school here in America and growing up and not knowing what your true history was? I didn't even know the history of Black people in this country, what we had contributed, until we started getting and demanding Black history be taught in the schools back in the 60s. And we were consumed with learning and amazed at the contributions we had made in this country, and even more amazed when you go back to African history, you know. And let's see, what did you say, Ashton? You have a connection, I assume. 3 generations back, my people were men. Well, see, that's the way I am. I'm what, one, two, three, four, five generations in America. Okay, and so I don't really have that connection, except I know I do have that connection. And what did you say? You check other as well, Dion? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think you say you can trace back to the continent of Israel and here in America. Okay. Did you have a problem with your genealogy when you were tracing back to the continent? You know, that's where I got that brick wall. And I know a lady named Shunshai was supposed to be working on that too. But hmm, that's interesting. And that's wonderful that you can trace that. Oh, sure. Wait a minute. How I do it now? Wait a minute. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I do this right. Is that it? Did I do it right? Okay, TC. But yeah, if you go back and you can actually trace. Now, Dion, you say you put other as well, you know, and that's something that, like I said, I do it, but I also put Black America, you know. And I think, Ashton, you know, if we lived in somewhere like France, we could probably do that and just say American, but it's like they don't allow us to, you know? And Starbell, you said Black also. And so I'm thinking that you young people today, you know, did I do it, TC? Okay, okay. Yeah, I think that you young people are in charge here, and hi TC.
Hey, how are you? Good morning to you,
Good morning,
Miss Ray
hon.
Ellen. And good morning to everyone in the chat, and happy Veterans Day to those of us who are vets. And thank you for your service. And thank you,
Oh
Miss Ray
yeah.
Ellen, for your service. Thank you for Miss Ray Ellen for your service. You're a veteran also in a different type of way, but
Well,
veteran nonetheless.
every one of my all the way back in my family, they've been military.
Okay, there
Even
you go.
during World War I, World War II.
Hmm.
You know, I'm still doing the genealogy, but probably even before that. So, but yeah, happy
Exactly.
Veterans Day to you and to all vets.
Thank you.
I didn't
Thank
know
you.
it's Wednesday now, isn't it? Okay,
Oh my gosh, yes, it is.
week
I
went by
wanted,
fast. Go
I
ahead, huh?
wanted I kind of wanted to just answer a couple of things. I want to go back to your question about Mexican Americans, who may be like third generation here, and then they call themselves they were Mexican, and then now they call themselves Mexican Americans. Well, I don't have a problem with them at all. If that's what they want to call themselves, that's a wonderful
Right,
thing. Well, here's the difference between them and us. They came here voluntarily. We did not.
right, right,
And so what happens is that they can call themselves Mexican American and really know, even go back to what tribe and what community and what part of Mexico, because they were not stripped.
right,
They still have documentation. 3 generations is not that far back, honestly. It's like grandparents, really. So they have the opportunity, which is to have some documentation and at least to have somebody that knows some of the information, because they weren't sold here, they weren't sold there, they weren't sold somewhere else and in another country. We did not have that luxury. And I often tell people that we have a very different set of circumstances. And I think the reason why I will put Black, just to segue into the next part of your questioning, I will definitely check Black, because I want to make it very clear that I come from a lineage, African, that lineage right there,
Mm-hmm.
but with a different set of circumstances, because I'm not continental African today. I am African, meaning that I come from a glorious people that survived a treacherous situation. And I want to be very distinguished, our experience, the Black experience, is the blackness. Keep up with the optimistic. That's us. So
Okay,
and
well,
and
go ahead.
and that's the reason why I do it that way.
Okay. Now let me explain to you, because you probably missed the first part of it. When I explained that, it started out with us being called colored. Okay, colored,
Hmm.
and Negro, and Negro meant black, and we felt in the '60s that we were more than just a color. We felt there was no strength. The black came with black is beautiful, black power, and so on. And that's when the Pan Africanism movement was going on, and you know
Hmm.
we wanted that tie to Africa. And since because of slavery, we could not connect to any individual country, we just took the whole continent and said
Hmm.
African
Exactly.
American. And so that's how that started. But a lot of, like I was saying, a lot of young people do not like being called African American. And I was really interested in learning why um, the term African American seemed to be almost offensive to some young people, because like you said, you want to make sure that the lineage goes all the way back, but the lineage begins in Africa. So would you see how that would be connected at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
But
Absolutely.
you still prefer black, correct?
Absolutely, because we can't negate Black,
Right.
because
Okay.
we are not continental diaspora Black people. We are
Hmm.
not European Black people. Let me explain something. Black folks, or people of color, melanin, Moors, whatever you want to call it, we have been we were all over the globe for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, I
we
agree.
we we captivated Europe. I mean, there are books on it. They came before Columbus. They came, but so we have been around for a very long time. We have
Correct.
Black
Okay.
people, or melanated people, carbonated people. We have a different set of circumstances, though. And the thing is that there are some ones of us, and the reason why I say Israel, because I consider us the true Hebrews, the ones that were snatched from the continent as we migrated to that part of West Africa from East Africa on into Southern Africa, which at that point it wasn't called Africa because it was called something else, of course. And then we settled around into West Africa. That's where we were
Hmm.
snatched again in the second Exodus. So we were taken by ships, as we know, and all that kind of stuff, and brought over to the New World, if you will. So
Okay.
that's a whole. And so everyone that is African does not have that same experience or that same lineage and or same genealogy. But when we say Black, and when we nailed it in the 60s, when you all nailed it in the 60s and you got it and said this is how it's going to be because it's a political statement,
Right.
we did it that way for that reason. So Jesse comes up with this thing called African American.
No, it
So
wasn't Jesse. It was oh I- the guy who did Kwanzaa.
no, it
No,
wasn't Milana Karinga. It wasn't him. It was Jesse.
that's where I first heard about it was from
Yeah,
him.
Jesse. Yeah, Jesse did it. Milana came a little later after him,
Because I know
and he said it.
the Pan-Africanism movement totally is where it really came up, like
Well,
connecting
they were
like that.
talking about Pan Africanism, which is something a little different because they included the Africans from the diaspora. So the Africans from the West Indies, the Africans from South America and Europe, and the
Okay.
and including us, because I'm a Garveyite, so I'm definitely with the Pan African movement.
Okay.
However, we all still do have a different set of circumstances in the Americas, and even in Canada we have a different set of circumstances.
Right.
But
So you feel like the black connects us more worldwide than just saying African American. You feel like black connects us historically with the entire world, is what you're
n-
saying.
n- I think no. What I'm saying is that black specifies us to specifically this land, our set of circumstances, and that we are the descendants of the catastrophic situation that occurred from the transatlantic slave trade. And we need to distinguish ourselves because when we're dealing with reparations, which my family, we're in the process of doing personally, or our family, we have to distinguish the fact that we are the ones that are the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. Everybody that's African is not a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade. So the
Okay.
black is specific and political for us here in this country so that we will be able to, I guess you could say, collect, for our reparations.
Okay. Okay. So you're connected it to reparations then also, correct?
Right, because black is definitely political. It's a
Okay.
political statement because we already know that we're not the color black. We know this. You know what I mean? However, the color black, if you even looking in it from a scientific perspective, it is a hodgepodge of all colors into one.
Mhm.
You see, and
Okay.
if you look at us as black people in this country, we come in all different colors, shades, and all kind of great things.
Right. That's where I got
You
into
know,
the biracial thing too. Yeah. Go ahead, hon.
so you know, I just think I just utilize. Sometimes it all depends on what the situation is, and especially if I don't really feel like having to go deep into it, I will say I will do African American. Sometimes I'll put American African, and I'll change it, and I'll change it around, and people are like, huh? And I'm like, well, you have to understand how the verbs and the nouns and the pronouns and the proper nouns all you put it together. And so you want to put American African because you're American first and African is your lineage. Um,
Okay. I think when we did that back in the 60s, I think that it was more or less the model we had in front of us,
Mhm.
was Mexican American, Italian American. Well, we can have a country too. But I see what you're saying now,
Absolutely.
you know,
And the thing is
because
that we
go
we
ahead,
know
hon.
Africa. We know Africa is not a country; it's a continent,
It's a
and so
continent, correct.
right, and it's made up of 52 countries. So now we are again, because of how we got here through the transatlantic slave trade. They took us from all over the continent, and then they took us from West Africa, and but they took us from all over.
Well, that's what I was saying is that what we in the 60s, our thinking was, okay, we can't claim a country because we don't know which country because it was all
Hmm.
countries, so we claimed the entire continent
Continent.
when we
There you go.
when we started with African American, okay? Because
Absolutely. Mhm.
we did not know. We could not say we're Ghanaian American, Nigerian
Mhm.
American. We couldn't say that, okay? But we could say we
Exactly.
were from Africa. Now, when you speak about Black people being all over, do you think that because the origin of Black people was in Africa, it would still be applicable to, the world history?
Wait. Ask that question one more time.
Okay, the origin of black people being Africa. Okay, do you think that Africa would still be inclusive because that is the origin and the beginning?
So we don't come from Africa.
Okay, why do you say that?
So we come from the. Okay. So let me just no. Let me back that up.
Make it plain, honey.
Yeah. I am. I'm trying. The
Okay.
map as we know it right now in our face in our space is not the map of old. So the
Well,
part
yeah, there's
of
a problem with the map. There's a real problem with
well,
it
no, no,
because
it's not a problem. It's
well, I
just
mean,
that
as
it's
far as
just
the
it,
size of countries and so on,
well, no,
the yeah.
I'm not even going into that. I'm talking about the names of the countries that we're dealing with right now are not the ones that were back in those days. So
Oh,
Africa
yeah,
wasn't even the continent Africa. It was called
right.
something. It was called other things. So it was called Canaan and all that good stuff.
Okay,
Here's where we go. Okay, that's what and don't I'm not dismissing what you're saying because that's a whole nother political thing about
right,
the size.
right.
It's
Yeah.
ooh. Um, the thing is that we know that we come from this area called Canaan,
Uh-huh.
and Canaan included what they carved out as the Middle East. They so cleverly, politically, and strategically carved that out, called it the Middle East, and then they took Africa, and then they took the Middle East away as though that this was some other type of people, which it was not. It is not. That is all us.
Well,
And
I
and
noticed that they did that with the map because Gil Scott Heron brought that up in one of his recordings, and when he said, you know, we have they moved Egypt from Africa to the Middle East because people think
yes,
that's the Middle East. But
absolutely, absolutely.
well, I think that like I was saying, young people today, like my generation, we did it the way we saw it, and that's why I was asking the young people here, what do you
Mhm.
think? What do you prefer to be called? It's just like biracial. You know,
Yes.
um, I'm confused by that term, and I said that earlier in the broadcast that most of you young people on here, Ashton, Dion, where'd she go? Starbell, most of
Hmm.
them said that they want to be called black.
Hmm.
And you know, you can't
Hmm.
you have the right to insist upon a change. If there's enough
Hmm.
people insisting upon it, enough young people,
Yes.
then
Hmm.
that change will be made because we demanded it back then and you all can demand it now because this is
Absolutely.
this is your time. And what we decided back in the 60s, okay, does not mean that, because admittedly, our knowledge at the time was limited because we were still learning our history. You got to
Well,
remember,
but it wasn't limited. It was where it was. Just like we are still learning now. It's not like we know everything now. We
we didn't,
continuously learn.
but
So
you
it
know what?
is.
Go ahead, honey.
So at that time, we knew what we knew, and we knew based on what it was, what was going on at that time. One of the things that I really appreciate back in those days, and that's what happened with me, is that we traveled and we did go places. Whereas I'm not seeing a lot of our folks now really wanting to go to the continent and here's what I'm saying, not to go to Jamaica or go to the continent or go wherever and shake it up and twerk. I'm talking about to learn and to go on a sojourn for, our history and of course have a nice time, but to learn and to bring back and to come up with your own epiphanies of who you are in your essence.
Right,
So
right.
you understand what I'm saying?
Well,
So we now
what I'm trying to
now
do.
it's
Go ahead. Go
now
ahead, honey.
it's not um it's a dummy down type of a thing, whereas before we were on a quest and we were searching because we knew we didn't know everything, or we knew a lot of stuff had been stripped from us. So we were on this quest and we had this thirst for knowledge. Everything now, education has been dummied down. Education, if you're smart, or if you seem smart, or if you even want to be smart, unfortunately nowadays children won't even go to class and raise their hand and explain and show that they are knowledgeable, because it's the thing not to be, you see. So there's a problem with that, and when you don't want to be, you don't want to know, and that's not good.
Well, I think, what my view is this, okay, because I'm basing this on my experience also, is that,
Mhm.
you know, when I said we were still learning, as I said earlier, when I was in school, as I said, I only knew about slavery, Booker T. Washington, and George Washington Carver. That's the
Mhm.
extent of the history that I knew. And I was a member of the Black Student Union in the 60s, and we were demanding Black history. And
Mhm.
we barricaded ourselves in one of the libraries or something like that,
Mhm.
somewhere. I remember chairs and whatever. But we had no knowledge. It was totally kept from us. So when I say we were still learning when all this was going on, the 60s was really lit. Okay. But we were
Yes, it
actually
was.
learning. I did not know. Okay. We did not know because they kept that from us. Okay.
Some of our people did not know, but there were still a plethora of people who had been and who did know, and they were coming to your universities, at the Black universities. I like I'm saying, at HBCUs, we have these things. We knew these things.
Okay.
It was not a question. My mother's 80. Like it was already known to her through the griots and through the HBCU, just the whole
Well, see,
African experience.
the difference
But
is that I grew up
Mhm.
in a city, an inner
Mhm.
city, in public schools. Okay.
Right.
And this was not taught. This information was not taught to me. And
Mhm.
like I think I told you before, I started doing my own research when I got into college. But this was not something, and I think as a collective group at the
Mhm.
time, just discovering, we wanted to claim that. Okay.
Right.
And as the generations progressed, such as your generation and subsequent ones, then I do believe that you all had far more information than we had even at that time when
Mhm.
we just jumped onto that. And that's why I posed the
But
question
but
to you all.
But here's the thing, Miss Ray Ellen, because I have people that are my age that say, "Oh, we didn't know anything," and I'm like, "Well, what was going?" See, it's a difference when you don't know and then when you don't want to know. So, you people like you, when you want to know something, you will gravitate that information to you always. When you have people out here, who say, "Well, where was this? Where was that?" Well, did you ask? Did you form groups so that you could have a Black student union? Like you said, you all demanded to have a Black student union and get your history and things. Of course, it didn't fall in any of our laps, but you have to ask and say there's more, and know somehow deeply in your soul that there's more to me, there's more to my history than just this hodgepodge hootenanny granny fanny crap that they're teaching us.
Well, I think too, it depends on the parent because I do know my parents were in education. Well, my family was in
There you go.
education,
There you go.
but the
Right.
thing is, they did not tell me either, but they did instill in me that, quest for knowledge. But what I
Right.
did with my own child, okay, is that I put him into you remember Marcus Garvey Elementary School? You ever heard of that?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
put him in there for 1 year. This was after I had my epiphany. Hydri, um,
Hey,
after I
Dre.
had my epiphany and realized
Mhm.
how stunted I had become, I,
Mhm.
you know, put my child into Marcus Garvey for
There
one
you go.
year. Okay,
Right.
1 year. And
That's
because
cool.
I wanted him to know who he was and what his history
Exactly.
was. But,
There you go.
so he became aware. But a lot of parents, unfortunately, in our community, do not know these things. Okay. They and so when we talk about
Why don't
having
they
the
know?
knowledge, well, it goes through generations. If their
Mhm.
parents didn't teach them or tell them or put them in a position, because as long as we don't have control of the schools, the public schools, then the information, the textbooks are made up in Texas. Okay. We don't have any control over what's being put in those textbooks. So there's really, you know, no way to know unless till now Black history has been taken out of the schools and taken back. And that's where I put the problem is that we don't have that power to make sure that children know their history. And the parents don't know that there is a missing history. And
So
that's what
so
I'm
I
seeing today.
so I don't necessarily see it that way. I think we are the power. We have the power, and I think that our right now our position in terms of our mind and our attention is not on what's priority. And that we have a multitude of trauma and compounding concerns and issues that unfortunately some of which take precedent over education, like food, clothing, water, and shelter. And sometimes we people are so traumatized and because of some things that have happened in their family that they don't necessarily have that in the forefront.
Agree.
However,
I agree.
there are a multiplicity ones folk who who do want to know, and they may not know, but they want to know, and they may not know where to get started, but they know how to ask, and they will ask, or go somewhere and just ask, go to church and ask, go to the community person, go to the lady or the man who's an educator in your community, go somewhere and just ask. And
Uh-huh.
again, are you going to get the answers right away, right now? No, this is not instant oatmeal, instant grits, or microwavable popcorn. This is a process, and folks have to understand. As long as it took for them to strip us away from about say 2,000 years of education and our history, it's going to just take that much longer for us to retain it back, or regain it and then retain it. So it's not an overnight process. I just still say that we do have a lot of folks who have information, and I look at it like this, Miss Ray Ellen, just like on here. Had it not been for people like you who open up, see, here's the thing: you open up your platform, and you always have, and there's still some content creators who open up their platforms to have these educational discussions from time to time. However,
Hmm.
there are some people who absolutely just do not, and they stay in that low vibrational state. Nobody wants to be with a failure.
Hmm.
Nobody.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, I and there's some of us who are educators, there are elders in our community, and when we see certain things and when we see our young people, we try to talk to them. We try to really talk, not demand or command or be bossy about it, but just say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You need any help with so and so? Oh no, I got it. And all you can do is to offer and to say, I'm here for you.
Well,
And then,
the thing that I'm trying to do is inform because a lot of people don't know,
or they
how
don't, or they don't
don't
want to know, or they
how
don't want
certain
to know.
well, how certain terms, because you guys are so young to me, okay? How certain
Mm.
terms came into being, and I saw them evolve in real time, okay? And so a lot of people are critical without having all of the background. And instead of
Yes.
being critical, let's ask the younger people why and how they feel about it. but being critical of the term itself,
Hmm.
without knowing how it evolved, and understanding that this is what we had available to us at the time does not mean it
Right.
has to stay that way. And I've seen a
Right.
lot of young people, even tonight, who just refuse to be called African American. And I was, I say it was a multiplicity of thoughts because I'm torn. I go back and forth. I'm a black woman, I'm an African American woman. But then, as I said, I've got multiple DNA, okay? White,
Yes.
Native American, and black.
Hmm.
So I do check other and add Native American. But I think that, I would like to see the young people, and some are doing that now, like yourself, who are saying, no, you call me what I want to be called because this is your generation, okay? And it's up to you all how we move forward. It's not up to me because we did what we needed to do back then. And
And we still play a part in this, in helping to mold, because they need to we need to make sure that we stay in their ear, and on top of things, to help them with the
was
history and
when
stuff,
when I
like you're
say young
doing.
when I say young people, I'm including you, okay?
Oh, you no.
Because of my age,
Thank you. Thank you.
because of my age, you know, I have these conversations with my, nephews, my son, different people, and
Hmm.
so I listen, but I also, I'm more led now to follow. You understand what I'm saying? Because
Yes. Yes.
this is you all's generation. This is you all's time. And we did what we did back then. And if it needs to be changed, you know, then or
Hmm.
move forward, let's put it like that, move forward,
Hmm.
then it's up to you young people to make sure that's done. Now, the other
Hmm.
issue I brought up was biracial because when I was growing up, and Dree, you might want to weigh in on this also. Okay, if you had one drop of black blood, you're considered black. And so I see the term biracial as being
Hmm.
a way to divide us because my great grandmother looked like she was white. Okay. And
Okay.
my
Yeah.
grandmother was very fair skinned, but my grandfather, was very, very dark. Okay. And
Hmm.
he looked African. Okay. And just growing up, light skin, brown skin, I don't know where the biracial came in because maybe because it was not available for me to even say that back then. But
No.
now,
So here's the thing. Okay. So politically, we have a situation that's getting ready to unfold right in front of our faces. And that's this thing called reparations. So and here's the piece of it that a lot of us are definitely concerned about. If you're just because you have 1 ounce of black blood, you're black.
well, that was
So that
back in the
means,
day. That was
well,
back
no,
in
that's
the day.
that's
Yes.
no, that's exactly what goes. That's exactly the same mantra and narrative that is spun today.
Oh, real? Okay.
It is the same. It is the same scientific mantra that is said, that is spun today. Now, I have a problem with that, me myself, because now here's the thing. When I collect my reparations, and it's for black people of a certain lineage, to be perfectly honest, all white folks and black folk have some kind of, we are all mixed.
Yep, we are.
So the bottom line is that what they're going to get my reparations for my experience. So um we have to redefine, and that's what I'm looking for,
Yeah.
this other generation to
Yeah.
come up
Now,
with some redefinition. But the only way they can do it is to understand the history, and they have to go back, and they have to talk to the elders about certain things in order to understand what we need in order to be able to gain from and to
mhm,
manifest what is supposed to be ours. The Indians, the Native Americans were able to do it.
Yeah.
And this is the reason. And the Native Americans, those, those that are real, like true, they call them true blooded ones. They have a problem with, some of the quote, the Chickasaws, because that's kind of like a hybrid to them. And so they were able to benefit these Caucasians that were mixed in.
Well, I think what
So,
I see with the Native Americans is that, and I've seen it myself now. I do. We as a family, we do have registration as Native Americans, but before there was a time when well, I'm part Native American, I'm part Indian, as we used to say, but they changed the rules that if you did not have an affiliation with a tribe that was
mhm,
documented,
there you
then
go.
but that's about money because they were getting all of this money all of a sudden.
Exactly. It's all
You know?
political.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
And
And
I'm
that's
not
the
going to
reason
let
why
them.
I say, you just hit the nail on the head. The same
Mhm.
thing with us. We have got to be very mindful of when they start changing when they start changing the documentation in order for you to get this money or even qualify. The criteria is X, Y, and Z. And if you don't fit that criteria, then you don't get it. Well, so what people do is they redefine themselves to fit that criteria at the moment in order to manifest for whatever it is they're manifesting from.
That's
So
correct.
you see what I'm saying? Now,
Yeah.
other races are very strategic at doing that. And
Yeah.
we too, and that's why I talk to my young brothers and sisters about being very strategic. Again, I don't have I put Scottish or Scottish American on one on an application one time. And that's because I know that my folks come from Scotland. And
Right.
well, it was a drop off. It was, you know, in between. So so when I got to the place, they said I lied, and they were like, they're not even gonna accept my do an interview because I'm not Scottish, so forth and so on. Now it was very interesting because I think I see Dree, like Dree said, if you look black, then that's what you
Yes.
are.
And
Nobody looks.
nobody looks. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm probably going to
I
say
was
the
just
same
gonna
thing
say
you
they
are.
don't look at me. You can't see me and see Scottish,
Well,
or what
I'm the same
people
way.
perceive.
You can't look at me and see Irish. Okay.
Right, right,
Okay. But that's part of my lineage is Irish. Okay.
right.
And that's part of just like the Native American is part of my lineage. But when you look at me,
Yes.
and I know people say, well, we haven't seen you. You look at me, you see a black woman. Okay. You don't see
Exactly.
Irish or Native American. I wanted to ask Dree something right quick. Dree,
hmm
do you prefer to be called African American or black? But yeah, they look at me and they say, you're a black woman. Okay. But
Right,
what my
right.
my DNA says something different. And so I think when we
So
say
there's the phenotype, and then there's the genotype, right?
yeah,
And
right,
so the phenotype we see, the genotype we don't. But
right,
don't negate my genes, my genotype, my DNA, because
right.
that is me. You see what I'm saying? More so than anything, because the phenotype can go away, but my DNA does never. You see, so I understand it. I get you, and I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do identify as black,
hmm
okay? That's what I see, okay? But I also know there's a lot more there's different like Dree says, most of us have a plethora of races slash
And
cultures in our backgrounds, okay?
yes, absolutely,
And I agree with that, very much.
absolutely.
And I know that to be true. That's why all of a sudden the biracial term, I said no, you have to consider my age because some things they happen and they're new to me, and I'm like, okay, I have heard this before, biracial, okay, and I'm like, okay, I don't understand because we had it, the rules, quote rules that were set up. one drop of black blood and you're black. And so there was more unity, but I feel like the term biracial itself separates some black people from other black people.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the criteria is to be biracial, because I feel in this country, we all got something else in us. That's just the way it is because of the practices of the slave owners and plantation owners and so on. You know, um, we all, I believe, have some white in us. Okay. And
So,
because
so
the way the African people and the Indian people connected, we have Indian in us. So I'm trying to figure out this biracial that automatically separates people.
what you have just made is an assumption, Miss Ray Ellen, and you made an assumption that biracial it is black and white and possibly in American, a Native American. So
I don't know what it is really.
biracial, but what I'm saying to
Honestly.
you is that but Dree defined it, and she said, and she's right. It's two races or two cultures, two different cultures, and so
Okay.
there are many people who are Spanish and Asian, if you will.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
um, you understand what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
you
I
you,
do.
you have those people that call themselves the Chaldeans. And the Chaldeans, they're Arabic people, but they're not Muslims, they're Christian because they come from a different set of circumstances. And they come from ancient Kemet and Hebrew, which are
Mhm.
biracial.
Okay.
So biracial doesn't just mean maybe black or white, or what we consider black and white, or Caucasian and African American and Native American, but biracial just means two different cultures, two different races, and it can be two of any culture or race, not
Uh-huh.
just ours. And of course the different set of circumstances. So other people do not um uh they don't subject themselves to the same definition of the one blood of Japanese, and you're Japanese versus Japanese and Polish. So if they're like, oh, I'm biracial, I'm Japanese and I'm Polish, and they embrace both.
Mhm. Okay.
You
Well,
see what I'm
that's
saying?
so
Mhm,
seeing it in the black community,
mhm.
confused me because we were all black at one time, and now you have a group of people who saying they're biracial when a
It's all
lot of us,
political. It's all about
yeah,
numbers.
I can see that. I can
And
see
this is
that.
what we
Now,
have to
Dre,
we
I was going to read what Dree says when she says black or African American is fine to me. However, when people see my name on the paper,
mhm,
um, the question starts.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
And yeah, it's an interesting topic. And like I said, my goal is to let the young people know the evolution of the term, but not to suggest one or the other. But if there is a strong preference among the young people, I think we should roll with that. But I did
Well,
want
I think we
young.
need to. It's not about that. I don't want to just keep it and put it in their hands for them to make the decision, because they don't have the history, and they're 20 years of they don't know.
When I say
We
young
have
people, now
to.
remember, I'm talking about you too as a young person. Okay.
Well, but I understand. But one of the things, I'm 50, so I'm
I know.
50, and my mother's 80. So I have a particular experience. I don't have a young mother. I have a mother that was 30 when she had me. So
Hmm.
what? So and my family is they're older. So I always sat at the helm and of in the tutelage and at the feet of most of these folks, and I do it. I still do it to this day.
Hmm.
And the one thing that I glean and I gain from being with the elders is the history, then putting it in its proper perspective,
Correct.
compartmentalizing, just compartmentalizing and understanding, okay, why they use this, why did they do this at this time, why was this going on, okay, well, we could use this here, and this can be, you can do this and say this in the South, but you can't do this in the North. or vice versa, or
Mhm.
and just understanding how the connection and the relationships are. So we
Yeah,
still have to be in the picture. We have to be in the picture because we have to help them to connect the dot.
yeah, and
And then
I think
Mhm.
that's what, well, like I said, that's what I'm trying to do is put
Okay.
out there the evolution of the term and then let someone else take it from there because,
Mhm.
I know how
Exactly.
it started and why it
Mhm.
started and how we were thinking, the group think at that time. And the
Mhm.
group think was that, you know, well, now that we know we have a longer history than that starts on the shores of America, we need to
Mhm.
claim Africa somewhere in our, and that's how
Well,
it
we
started.
can,
Yeah,
and we can, but you can't claim something that you don't and never ever step foot. Mentally, they have to. I'm telling you, they have to go there. You have to sojourn. It's a mental trip, but then when you get there in the physical, you thus connect to your ancestors in a way that I can't even begin to
I've
explain
heard
what
that. I've heard
happened.
that. I've heard that before. But what you have to realize also is that a lot of people, for financial reasons and so on, cannot get to
Mhm.
Africa. Okay, they
Mhm.
can't go there, and there has to be a way to instill this. And I still think it's through the schools and what we teach all children, not
So.
just those who
Mhm.
are fortunate to have someone who knows, but those who don't. We need to
let,
be
let me
involved in the textbooks and so on.
mhm. Let me tell you something, Miss Ray Ellen. There are people like you. And let me just say this. Dree said something about the Trinidadians, some have Chinese backgrounds and
Right.
Indian. Exactly, that right there. And just even in the islands, the plethora of different cultures and backgrounds that folks have. It's a beautiful thing. But I want to say this. There are elders that these young people need to tap into, that there's some older people that would send a young person to Africa if they wanted to go.
Well,
And I'm gonna tell
I think we need it on a much larger scale than that, though. Then,
one
you
at a
know,
time, but we do have it at a large scale. We have various foundations and charities that do these things if folk apply, if folk are in those circles of to know and wanting to know. If you are on the corner at the bar twerking, you're not going to gravitate to you, somebody who may want to have a conversation about going to Africa.
well, the thing I find with that, TC, is that there are more people who don't know to even want to know, okay, that this exists. All right. You first have to get the educational system back in order where they learn about themselves, where they learn about African history or world history. Like Queen Charlotte was a black woman from Portugal, okay?
Mhm,
And,
mhm.
and she was the Queen of England. She's the grandmother of Queen Victoria, and she was a black woman. But you first have to start somewhere, okay? If they're not taught this in elementary school about their connection, and who they are, then
Mhm.
as they grow older and they're not taught in junior high or high school, okay, then there's not going to be a desire to learn this, okay?
I, I
But if
don't
they
I
go
don't I
through
don't think
it,
so. I think that
I
all throughout the
I know
children ask questions and they don't get the answer. And I think it becomes a burning desire. Like, I'm not getting these questions answered. Somebody's gonna answer the question, but they might drop off with it or my what, but they come back to it some way, form, or fashion. And
but
they
not
they
all
they
children ask these questions. Not all children ask these questions,
I
and the parents don't
but all
ask
won't.
the questions.
But there are more who do than don't. They ask, they want to be astronauts, they want to be this, they want to be that. They want to know these things. They may not say Africa, they may not say, "Oh, I want to know about the Congo," or "I want to know about ancient Kemet," or "I want to know about Alkebulan," because they don't know those terms yet. But
Yeah, they don't
when a
know, but where, a lot of times if they don't
Mhm,
know, the thing is that where's the question going to come from? If they're in
The
school,
parents, the parents,
well, if the
the
parents
pe-
don't know either. So if
and
they're in the same situation as the parents, when the young
mhm.
children are in elementary school, okay, it starts with the textbooks and what they are taught.
Miss Ray Ellen, and when there have been mothers and fathers who couldn't raise their own children, and they would give them to a family member or church member or somebody in the community. It's the same thing. If you know that your child is asking questions and you don't know and have the answers, then you take your child and you say, listen, we're gonna go, Miss So and so is down the street, or Miss So and so at the church house, or the lady who went to school or whatever, and you go and you get your children the questions that they need answered. A lot of our folks didn't have a lot of the stuff, a lot of questions answered, but they knew someone who did, and they
But
went to those people, and they went to the people who know.
but as far as history is concerned,
No,
I beg
right.
to differ
In terms
because
of history, in terms of where to get it, or even just where to start. Because once you start with one book, or once you start in one area over here, or once you start and talk with these people over here, it will you will do it's a natural progression, and it'll
well,
be overwhelming.
I think that the problem is, like I said, is education because my family were all educators. Okay. I never
Mhm.
had those questions because I didn't know that they needed to be asked. Okay. When I started having the questions was when I started learning about my history. Okay. And I was
Mhm.
out of high school and in college when I started having the questions because I never knew. You see what I'm saying?
So here,
So
so here's the
this
thing: when the children are in school and they're seeing, oh, they're seeing all of these other images of other people and other things, and they don't see themselves. They come home and they say, "Where do we come from, Mom?
no, they don't.
Where?" Yes, we
Because I
do.
never,
Yes, we
no, I
do.
never did. Because I'm gonna tell you, I never did.
Okay, then
I never,
that's fine. Well, there are some of us who do, and some of us, there's a many people who do. And young people will ask these questions. If they don't see themselves, they're like, well, where do we come from? Or these people came from, I read the book in the Bible about Adam and Eve. And when I saw two white folk, I was like, how are these people white? And they come from this place called Africa or Persia, and it's over there in near the equator, and people live near the equator and they're that white. How does that happen? And I had to ask my mother. She had to go somewhere and get the answer because I was
well, see,
adamant about that.
but
We
you have
young
that curious mind, whereas, I'm speaking as a
children
whole.
do.
I can go into South Central LA and I can tell you for a fact, okay, from people I know, these are not the questions that we came up with. Because what we saw on the screen, okay, was not us. There were no black people on television in the
Exactly,
1950s, okay?
exactly.
I didn't question that. What it
Well,
does, it has the opposite effect. Now, wait a minute, it has the opposite effect, okay? You don't feel like you belong. Your self-esteem, because you don't look like the people, is on the floor, okay? Your standard of beauty is what's on the screen, and you're not the same. So these questions with children, and I
mhm.
was a child once, we internalize it. And like I said, now I took a different step with my own child after I realized what was happening. Okay. But when you have a vast majority, okay, and we decided back then it was education. It's not just the child saying, oh, I have a question, because everybody doesn't have the connections with other people that someone such as yourself may have and your upbringing and the way
But
your family did it, because every family does not do that. And that's unfortunate. Now they'll go ask how to make sweet potato pie, or they'll go ask another question about, do you pick cotton? What did you do? That sort of thing.
mhm,
But
mhm.
as far as the
And I have those two. I mean, we listen. It's not. Yes, we have. I'm still saying that there's somebody. the children do, some children do ask these questions. And I think when those children ask those questions, I think then it's time for, look, if I don't have the answer as a parent and it's all right, then we just at least go find out where we can get the answers from.
And I think that
And
that's a good suggestion for all parents, and those who hear us to do that. It's
right.
just, but like, it's just, to me, it's not like a thing that happens all the time. It's like hearing the fairy tale about the princess and the pea, and you think that you're supposed to feel a pea under your mattress. You just realize you don't feel no pee under your mattress like that princess did. Okay. And you internalize that, well, I'm not no princess then. You don't go and tell your parents that maybe, but you internalize it and you think about it. It's the same thing. And if I could only express to you the impact of knowledge once you get it. The first thing that happens is not just pride, but it's anger. Because
Yes, I agree.
all this time, you thought you were so limited, and to find out later that you were not limited. And that's why I said, and I'll go back to what I've said initially, my goal, is to provide the evolution of the term African American. And I would like to see other young people, such as yourself and younger, come up with some sort of solution to the controversy surrounding it and move forward from there. Now, Dree says, my father's Italian and Antiguan, grew up in Trinidad. And she says,
Mhm.
Black or African American is fine with her. She doesn't mind.
Right, right.
And, you know, I think that it's a point where if we say, you know, we want to be called Black, then that's what it needs to be, you know, but we have to put it out there because there's a lot of you young people that say, "Don't call me African American," and I get the
Hmm.
nuance when you said I put down American African, okay,
Hmm.
but you got to realize everybody's not that nuanced. TC, everybody's
But
not like
here's the thing. If you but here's the thing. If we can't have it both ways. If we want change, then we're gonna have to understand that there's a process here, and we're gonna have to learn, and we're gonna have to be the think tanks and things. We're gonna have to do that. Now, I do it because there are a multiplicity of people who do American African, and there are multiplicity of people who do African American and Black, and there are political reasons why, or they can give their own reasons why they decide to do it this way here or do it this way over here.
And see, tonight's
It's,
the first time I heard about putting down American African. And
mm,
knowledge is power. And I think that, just like I said about the biracial, I still see that as a point of division in the Black community. And I hope that it moves moving forward, that, you know, we don't become separated as we could become. Because
but
I
it
do
wasn't a
remember,
term. It wasn't a term meant for Black people. It was
correct,
a
I
term
agree with that.
meant for
And
other
now,
people.
but I
But
see Black
but
people
but
embracing it.
again, because they don't have any history and they don't understand, and they don't obviously have any elders who can explain to them the politics behind the biracial and why it is not for us. Everything, just because it's a term, doesn't mean that it is for us, like you're
Mm,
trying to say. And this
yeah,
is where the elders come in. We have to be very assertive in letting them know, you can't embrace I don't embrace everybody. I don't embrace everything. I don't embrace a lot of stuff because I find out about it and dissect it, and then I put it back together. And then I say, well, where does it benefit me and my folks? And where,
right.
does it have any manifesto for our people? Because if it does not, if it's going to cause the division, which I believe what you're saying is absolutely correct, then we diss it. That's what we do. We don't do anything with it. However, there are other terms that other people, and I think Dree mentioned that, her folks, Garveyites, we've had people been doing these things. And we
Oh
just,
yeah,
what we've done, we have not, we've not carried on the tradition. We've
yeah,
not
and that
had the conversations. And that's why people like you having your platform and others who have their platform to have these discussions, we need to get back to it so that people can't say, well, I don't know, or I didn't know. Or if you don't know, then let's share. And we need to start doing that again.
yeah, we do. It's just like Dree is saying, uh, now with her, she says, black or African American is fine with her. Okay. And
Hmm.
with me, I'm the same way. But then there are people who are adamant that they don't want to be called black, and there are people who are adamant who don't want to be called African American. More on the African American side, I've noticed that with younger people. And
And
I,
I'd like to know why.
yeah,
My
and
question.
I'm one is torn because I go back and forth. Okay, I just do. I'm
Mhm.
black. I'm African
I
American.
would
Black.
just like to know. I would just like. I think that when we get a one definition for it, and then understand where it all came from, then we decide what if. And we're not monolithic. We don't have a one size fit all experience. So some things might be we can use black. I believe we should be able to use about maybe two or three daggone and be able to code switch.
Well,
See, because
well,
I'm about code switching.
look at what Ashton says. Okay, I can't trace my roots to Africa. I'm somewhat disconnected. I consider myself American. So he is like at the position like neither. You know,
So,
and we do
but
have.
how does so has he tried to trace his roots back to Africa?
I don't know. I don't know if he's still in here or not. But
No. Yeah. So again, I I can't.
but again, now we make now. This is another point I made earlier. We do not. What we do is we um in this country, race is so important that it's always listed. But I was telling some of the people earlier when I went to France
Mhm.
and I asked a black man, how does it feel to be a black man in France? He says, I'm not black, I'm French.
I'm French. Mhm.
Okay. And so nationality, and I see now why so many people migrated to France because the color, the race was not the top issue. I spoke to someone else over there. They said, what we go upon is our history with a country. Okay. We may not like somebody um, from, I forget, one of the countries they had a war with, but it's not because of their race. It's because the country has a history of a war with them. And
Mhm.
so,
Mhm. Mhm.
but in this country, everything is so much based upon race.
Mhm.
And I
It
think
is.
and so I think that's where it becomes an issue. Um, is and it gets more divisive as we go along.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. And yeah, they have
we're
their own. They have
sure
their
you
caste system.
exposed to everything. My mother was older than Black, Native American, and Indian on my mom's side. My grandmother was a slave that was treated by his master. Wow. Okay. Okay. So you have it
Mhm.
all, Dree, you know.
Mhm.
And
I even was telling someone the other day, because we were talking about the Harriet Tubman movie, and I was just saying how, the conversation came up about there were black people who became bounty hunters or the patrol or the police as we know it today,
yeah.
and they were talking about how that there were black people who would catch black people, free black people, and take them
Oh
back
yeah.
to their master. And I said, absolutely. I have my grandfather, I'm sorry, not my great, 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 great grandfather was
Yeah.
one of those people.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a history that I had to swallow and deal with because it wasn't one of those histories that you want to hear about. Nonetheless, it is still a part of my history. And so I know it and I understand it. And, you know,
Right.
now I know about some other things.
Yeah, and I think
However,
the research of and go back to my genealogy video, which you were part of, by the way. Um,
mm,
people will be amazed at what you learn when you do your own genealogy, because some things are not even passed down in some families. Now I'm looking at what Starbell says. She says, "Well, I was not born in this country. That's why I said black." And
Mhm.
that's her preference, because she has a country that she was born in. And I'm not
So,
going to ask her
was
which
does
one,
she
but
understand? But does she understand that black is a political connotation to people in this country who are of African descent through the transatlantic slave trade?
we'll see. That's what I'm saying. If she was not born in this country, then she has a direct connection to a country,
So
another
then she
country.
should. So then because she has her, if that's the case, and
And
she has a,
we're speaking about when they have it on the piece of paper, black or African American, period. That was
right,
everything. And so she's
right.
saying she was not born in this country. That's why she said black, because she has a direct connection to a country, and I can see that. And
But
she
I'm
may not
saying that
understand what country it was.
black does not pertain to people who are from other countries. It
Right, and
pertains to people.
she's saying that that's why she chose black over African American, because she's not from Africa. You see what I'm
What
saying?
is she? Is she not? Well, where is she from then?
I don't know. Uh,
So we
France.
don't know where she's from.
She says Martinique.
Saint Martinique.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Martinique.
So
So
she's West Indian. She's West Indian.
yeah.
Mhm.
So But anyway, you guys, I'm so glad you joined me, TC, and I'm so appreciative to have this in-depth conversation, because because I learned from it as well. And the conversation evolved to where you provided us with some um, very good direction and some good history as well.
Well, and
And I
same
just,
here, Miss Ray Ellen. You
I
and Dree, Starbell, and Ashton. I enjoyed the conversation, and I learned a lot myself. In
yeah,
terms of the thinking process. Yes, we have to, and the experiences that we all have, even here.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm going to close
beautiful.
this out now. And I want to thank everyone who showed up, like TC, Dion, 91, Ashton, Starbell, Dree, and I think that's it that's on here. And, you know, and that's it. Okay, so thank you everybody for showing up tonight. I'm really pleased with the information that I have received, and hopefully um, others who hear this will um, appreciate it, and you know, learn from it and move forward, and make some think
Mm-hmm.
about some things themselves as to what they exactly how they feel about it. And a lot of times you can poke people to the point where they have to think about it and they have to decide. So
Yes,
I'm going to close it
yes.
out, but everybody have a great night, and please try to find something that makes you laugh. It's so much easier. You just have a great night. Find something that makes you laugh. Make it smile. You'll smile about. And I am so pleased all you share with me about this. Have a good night. Good night. Good night. Nice.